I'm Ashley Pickle. That's Greg Powers, and this is This Week
in Cruton.
That's right. It is This Week in Recruiting, where we welcome on next-level athletes Greg Powers to talk about some of the biggest prospects in the great state of Texas. And, of course, we could not forget that this segment is brought to you by our good chicken friends at Chicken Express. Chicken Express. This is where you come in.
Oh, it's awesome. It's great. It's always fresh. It's always fresh.
That's a
and
fact.
That you can depend on. I mean, my chicken tenders are always piping hot. I have to let them cool off. And take that chicken, put it in the roll, not the biscuit.
Thank you. Hashtag team roll.
If you love biscuits, go for it. But, I mean, team roll, put it in the
wrong.
roll, dunk it in the gravy, put it in your mouth. Tremendous. There's nothing better.
We have a new person to talk chickeny with here, so I want to do that real fast. Are you regular Tindy or spicy Tindy?
Definitely spicy.
My girl.
Spicy with a roll.
We hired her for a reason.
See, I do go with the regular more, but I use the serendipity salt.
Oh, okay.
So
that
I
makes up
do
for
take
it.
them to the next level with that.
Okay, I respect it.
I love This Week in Recruiting because I always crave Chicken Express.
Oh, dude, my
afterwards.
stomach growls like 8 times
It
throughout
does.
this
Just
segment.
Thinking about the spicy tendies, I'm like, lunchtime?
It's time.
I'm going.
I've been making one trip a week right now to Waco for business, and there's a Chicken Express in Hillsboro, and they know my name now.
Heck yes, that's what we want. So a big endorsing movement there, as Chicken Express is our sponsor here of This Week in Recruiting. But let's go ahead and get into it. We'll start off with our prospect on the rise this week, 2023 Denton Ryan running back Kalib. Okay, yeah, you messed me up on that. Kalib Hicks,
Right.
There is an I in there. Kalib Hicks had a monster week on the recruiting trail, bringing in a lot of Texas offers this week. SMU, TCU, UTSA, one from New Mexico. So after an unbelievable breakout sophomore season, it looks like eyes on Texas college football are really starting to pick up for Mr. Hicks here.
Well, first and foremost, Kalib went to a camp at SMU, and then he went to a camp at TCU where he earned both of those offers. So there were some big camps in the Dallas Metro over the last week where Kalib was able to perform. So SMU had like a 2-day, what I would call mega camp, where there were tons of colleges on campus, and then TCU had a camp as well this weekend. So this is like, to me, when you see this type of activity, it's even bigger than like your typical offers, right? This is a guy that walks through the door at a school, and now they're seeing him perform, and they're like, you get an offer, right? So he's going to go off and probably pick up a lot more offers even than this. So I think that just a guy to really keep a close eye on because he looks the part on film. It's not an easy district, not an easy path that Denton Ryan has to play to win a state championship, and he looks great on film. He was listed at 5. I think we have him listed in the article. Let me double-check what that said. We have him listed at 5'10", 195, and he looks a little bit bigger on tapes. He looks around 5'11", 6 foot to me.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, he's got the stature for it, and it looks like he's got the quickness too. But I still think there is a little bit room for him to grow here, which is always a good thing. We say that sometimes that it looks like that could sound like a bad thing, but it's like if he can get that speed, especially out of the pocket right there, he's got the size to just barrel through people.
Yeah, definitely, and it's just the beginning for him, so he's gonna go on to bigger and better things.
Absolutely, and so Kalib Hicks, our prospect on the rise out of Denton Ryan. Moving on now to our commit of the week. This guy, a name that you heard on the biggest stage this year, and Gilmer quarterback Brandon Tennison, as he makes his commitment down to UTSA down there in San Antonio. And man, can't say we're surprised at all that Jeff Traylor is out there finding more hidden gems that people just haven't offered yet, and so they get quite the quarterback. And speaking to some of those Gilmer folks out there, they say this guy has potential to be one of the best quarterbacks to come out of Gilmer, and I mean that's a quarterback factory out there.
One of the top players in 4A for sure. He helped lead Gilmer to the state championship game last season, and you know what? It's not a surprise, to be honest with you, that Jeff Traylor got a commitment from a kid who plays in Jeff Traylor Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it was like meant to be.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if UTSA offers a guy or Jeff Traylor offers a guy from Gilmer and they go elsewhere, then
Then you've got some serious
Yeah.
issues on your hands.
Then I'm surprised. You know, everybody loves him in that community. And what I think that he's recognized in Brandon Tennison is something that I'm really coming around on. And I'm basing this statement behind the fact what I saw him do at the Elite 11 regional camp in Dallas, okay? So when you go to that camp, they break the quarterbacks up into segments, okay? There's always one group that is like the guys who they've predetermined before the camp even started. These are the top quarterbacks, and we're going to put them all into this group because this is where all the eyeballs are going to be. This was the Quinn Ewers, Cade Klubnik group. Brandon Tennison is in this group, okay? They have a top underclassmen group, and then so on and so forth. They end up with about 6 to 8 groups at these camps. So Brandon Tennison is thrown with all of the other top quarterbacks in the state of Texas. At first, I didn't know who Brandon Tennison was in this group. You know, you have a roster. Dumb me at this camp. Instead of printing them off in numerical order, I printed them off in alphabetical order, which is always a cluster when you're at the camp trying to figure out who everybody is, and you have to bounce around looking at numbers. But I noticed this kid coming through these drills, and he's technically solid. He's doing everything right. He's making all the throws. He's just not as tall as the other guys, right? He looks the part. Everything he's done, I mean, he looks like a technician, and especially on the rollout, working outside of the pocket. He had good footwork.
Quick release, too.
Yeah, quick release. So I was really blown away by what I saw. And then come to find out, it's Brandon Tennison. Finally put all the pieces together. And now watching his tape and seeing what an athlete he is with the football in his hands, how much speed he has, explosion, quickness. He could play another position, 5'10", 5'11", 180 pounds. He could play wide receiver. He could do some different things on the football field. But seeing the strides that he's made as a technician throwing the football, I think this is a really big pickup for UTSA, and he complements Eddie Lee Marburger so tremendously from the quarterback that they signed in last year's class. A completely different style, and I think if you could mix and match these guys in some way, you know, I mean, maybe Eddie Lee comes in and is like gangbusters and you never want to pull him off the field, but I think that they have to see a spot for Brandon Tennison to get reps at quarterback and be involved as a huge part of that Roadrunners offense moving forward.
I completely agree, and I covered their game in the playoffs against Caddo Mills, and I can tell you that was one of my favorite interviews I did all year because I pulled him in, and you know, what does it mean to get this big win and all of that? And his teammates love that guy so much. So I think that's why they love him so much at the quarterback, is he's a true leader out there on the field. So very impressive stuff. No surprise that our commit of the week was Gilmer quarterback Brandon Tennison, who will be heading down to UTSA. This is This Week in Recruiting with Next Level Athletes. Greg Powers. You can get involved with the conversation, #TFToday. But now we move on to our underclassman of the week. This time, a 2023 athlete out of Temple in Mikal Harrison Pilot. And if you are looking for a guy that doesn't have many eyes on him or many offers, this is not where you're going here. He picks up some big offers this week alone from Texas, Texas State, Florida State, and Oklahoma State. But, you know, those 4 offers just add the tally to 28 stinking offers and a true athlete out there on the field.
If he was in the class of 2022, he'd be one of the most heavily offered prospects. So that's how things are going in the life right now for Harrison Pilot, who I have to say, I never show favorites when it comes to covering recruits or doing recruiting coverage. That, you know, I think an unbiased coverage is the best
Capital
way to
J
go.
Journalist right there.
You know, but what I know about this guy makes him special to me in this regard. We knew about him before he really ever became a thing, right? He started as a freshman at Temple. He played safety. And I appreciate the fact of how hard he worked to turn himself into a national recruit. He's a guy who did everything he could, attended every camp, was doing training sessions, submitting videos that he filmed himself to try to get on the radar of other programs, doing interviews, and then his recruitment really started to take off after his sophomore season, where he flipped over to play on the offensive side of the ball at wide receiver and put up big numbers. Oh, and guess what? He can also play quarterback. You know, so like that's the position that he really grew up playing. He cross-trains at all these different spots and puts in a lot of work to turn himself into a guy that 28 schools, his list is going to go to 30, 40 easy, right?
Right.
So he's the guy who has put in the work, and that's what I can really appreciate about Harrison Pilot. And to boot, he's a great kid to talk to. Very
That's
respectful, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am type of kid, and always is available to give a recruiting analyst a helping hand if you ask him a question. So congratulations, Mikal Harrison Pilot, on all the attention you're getting and also for being a good dude.
I got to ask you real fast, too, just because, Temple is a program that doesn't have a lack in numbers. So you've got this guy that is a true athlete playing all these different positions, obviously can play on both sides of the ball. Do you think as he gets older and more mature in this program that they will try to solidify him to one specific spot, or is he one of those just studs that you have to keep moving him around?
I think he'll get a better look at playing quarterback his last 2 years, kind of based on numbers and need of what they're wanting to do. He obviously can go out and play wide receiver anytime. He was a headhunter at safety. He didn't have a lot of reps playing safety on tape as sophomore season. He exclusively played there as a freshman. But as he's grown, he's now at 6 foot or over 6 foot. I think it's just hard to predict without seeing him on game film at quarterback. That's the great unknown. I would list him as an athlete with watching his tape, thinking that wide receiver is probably the spot that he's going to end up at. But guys like him in that mold make a lot of money in the NFL playing defensive back.
Oh, yeah.
So, you never want to rule that out. If he has the skill set to play defensive back, then his measurables at that position make him more valuable. So that's what I kind of would suggest. Be like, hey, maybe you should concentrate on defensive. But it's, 28 offers.
Right. He'll figure out a place to go.
Who am I to judge? He knows more about where he'll play than me. But what I do appreciate about Temple guys, they're always hard-nosed.
Oh, yeah.
Very serious about football.
They got to be. Look at those pants. White and blue, baby.
So I do appreciate what dedication and vigor that Temple guys play with at the next level. And I'm looking at that Texas offer right now, right down the street. They've done a really good job recruiting that school, and they're one of his most recent ones. So
if he wants to stay home, that's the place.
We'll see how it plays out.
Absolutely. And finally, we get over to our recruit of the week. And this one, what we mentioned in our headlines on Monday, we've got to talk about it again with our recruiting expert, Greg Powers, as the big guy on defensive tackle. Now at Fort Worth Brewer, Bear Alexander went and visited down in College Station, took a tour around Aggie Land, and right after that announced that he was decommitting from Georgia. Now, this is a guy that has moved around a lot in the high school realm, so I don't know if this was necessarily the grandest of surprises, but I think that since obviously being a Texas-based podcast here, do you think that this bodes really well for the Aggies, or is it more of a, hey, recruitment's back open to normal now, I can go take some official visits?
I was really looking forward to this segment so we could just kind of talk about recruiting in general and official visits. We had our big first official visit weekend, and Texas A&M had a monster weekend. They not only had Bear Alexander on campus, they had Deontay Anderson and Harold Perkins and Chris Marshall and
some no names that you've never heard of.
So they really hit a home run, on their visit weekend. A lot of these guys came back raving about their official visit to Texas A&M. Now, this was the first official visit weekend, and I will flip and transition back over specifically to Bear. But just as a general recruiting note for people who love to follow recruiting and they really are into following the recruits that their team is after, what you're looking for on visit number 1, right? This is the first time a kid has come to your campus for an official visit, and he plans to take more. You have to be the leader. You have to be the number 1 school coming out of that visit. You can't be equal with another school that then that recruit is then going to go off and see. Unless something changes, like they take another commitment and they can no longer take that kid. But in the case of Bear Alexander, Harold Perkins, Bryce Anderson, Chris Marshall, that's not going to happen, right? These are the elites of the elite. Everybody has a spot for these guys. So you want to be the leader. And I think in the case of Bear Alexander, just kind of reading the tea leaves, he makes a decommitment from Georgia hours after his official visit ends, that Texas A&M can probably feel good about that they're the leader. in his recruitment right now. And that's what they now have to sustain as he goes on and takes other official visits to Miami, USC, and Alabama,
Right.
which are all going to be big official visits for him, right? But if A&M is in the driver's seat now, they have to stay there as he takes these other trips. But that's what you have to have happen. You have to be number one coming out of that first official visit.
And maybe allow me to ask a question here, and maybe I'm going to get yelled at in the comments for just being a dummy that didn't realize this. But now with official recruiting visits able to happen, are they giving them more official visits after missing last year, or is it still the same number of official visits that they're able to go do?
You have 5 NCAA allowable official visits, and that's still the number. So you can take 5. You can potentially get an extra official visit if there's a big coaching change and you want to visit the school that you've already committed to and their coach has changed.
Okay.
You can maybe take a second official visit to that school in circumstances where the NCAA has given approval for that.
Right.
So you get 5, and what we're seeing happen now is this month of June, where we ended the dead period, these top guys are trying to take official visits pretty much every weekend.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the guys who visited Texas Tech, Frisco Lebanon Trail offensive lineman Austin Kowecki, went to Texas Tech, to Lubbock, like during a midweek type of thing, and then left for this USC visit during the weekend. So you see a lot of these guys trying now to maybe get recruiting out of the way before their senior season starts. If they have the goal of being committed before they step foot on the field, the varsity field as a senior, then this month is huge for so many guys that remain uncommitted, and the committed guys too. You can see with Bear Alexander, this was a huge thing. Getting to actually take an official visit gave him pause to reconsider the commitment he had made to Georgia. And he's like, oh, well, I can probably go out and enjoy these visits to a lot more schools. Maybe I don't need to be committed.
So what you're saying is the recruiting world is just so boring right now. I mean, just nothing going on.
Fireworks are going to be firing this whole month of June. There's going to be big news and a lot of stuff to follow with these top recruits, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
And we appreciate our firework for joining us here. There we go. See,
Well
I can
done.
do it.
Well done.